Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, April 17th, 2023 at 7 p.m. We're in a regular business session tonight, and I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement statement. The City of Athens is on land occupied for a millennia by the Adena, Hopewell, Fort Ancient, and Shawnee people. Our first item of business tonight is establishing the quorum. All members of council are present. The next item is disposition of minutes for the regular session of council held April 3rd, 2023. If I could have a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We next have communications. I have two items, one of which is many citizens have received and seen it in the newspaper that this week is Athens Spring Cleanup and Athens Hawking Solid Waste Recycling Day. So during this week, citizens are allowed to place an unlimited amount of trash bags at the curb for their regular trash pickup. And these are for trash bags only. No construction items are allowed in the bag. And that if you have larger items, they can also be called, and you can call to arrange for pickup. And building materials, tires, and liquids not accepted at the curbside. And then there will be dumpsters available at the West State Street, 387 West State, for scrap metal and trash. Once again, construction debris not accepted. The second item is an email that I received from a parent of a student at Ohio University, and they requested that I let council members know and also announce at our meeting that they've had difficulty, and they mainly asked for this to be brought up so that we might be able to work on it with the university in the future, work with landlords. What's happened is that four graduating seniors had a lease expire on May 3rd. No conditions for extending it allowed by the landlord, despite the parents and grandparents asking. The students are having to move out and will likely move out and leave and not walk with graduation. They can't, and the parents are upset, and I understand why. So I've been in contact with the university, and I think Andrew Chicky has also been in contact with the university to see if there is something that we can do in the future to make people aware of this. It's unfortunate that, those students might have this as their last memory of Athens, Ohio. So anybody has any ideas, let me know. Thank you. Do we have communications from other council members? Councilmember Swank.
Just a couple of short things today. The first, we received an email from the Athens Sustainability Commission notifying council that at their last meeting, they voted unanimously to endorse the single-use plastic bag ordinance. They met several times on this, had great deliberation, and unfortunately, the chair of the committee isn't here tonight, but I'd ask Mr. Delock to extend our thanks to your wife, who is the chair of that committee, for the hard work they put in reviewing this proposal. Second thing, this past Friday, Solveig and I attended a recycling summit in Columbus, Ohio, where we found out some of the trends and things coming down the pipe in the world of recycling. There were 4 companies, all Ohio companies there, that actually purchased the raw recycled plastics that we generate and other municipalities around the state generate to create products such as plastic bottles that we see, and also the world's largest producer of plastic drainage pipe was there. And then a third company, which is starting up in Ironton, Ohio, which will be producing clear plastics. They also shared some educational materials with us and some things that we'll be sharing with council when we get to the point of discussing the trash and recycling contract for the future. That was this past Friday in Columbus.
Thank you. Communications, yes, Councilmember Carl.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd just like to announce that the university and the community is celebrating Earth Day this Saturday with our annual Earth Day parade. It will start in front of Pickering Hall on the Ohio University campus, wind its way through East Green and the main green, and through a little bit of the uptown area down Court Street to into Baker Center. It is about a 45-minute walk, and we will be on the sidewalks. I believe the mayor will be joining us again this year, I hope anyway. And everyone is invited. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilmember Spielness, do you have an announcement or
Well, I
communication?
just wanted to mention that I had been in contact with Amy Renner, the mayor of Chansey, and as part of our discussion about the Bailey Trail, so I'll talk about that later. But every one of the council members has a copy of that. I also provided it to Jesse Powers, and it will be in the minutes as available. So we'll talk about that more later.
Thank you. Any other communications? All right, communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason. Mayor Patterson.
Just a couple, President Isley, you mentioned the dumpsters that'll be down at the service garage, which again are available for individuals. You do need to bring a utility bill with your address on it and a photo ID to use that, but it's there for the public to use. I'm glad you also brought up, well, dumpsters in general. For move out this year, there will be a significant change in the dumpsters that we have out on the street. You know, during COVID, we had a lot of dumpsters all over because we knew people were not going to want to return with certain things for fear that they were contaminated and so on and so forth. Last year, we drew that down somewhat in terms of the number of dumpsters. This year, we're going to draw it down even further. There will be a dumpster on Court Street for people to be able to use to drop off things that they truly, well, things that should be going to the landfill, as opposed to gently used or reusable items. So it really encouraging the student body during move out to take things that can be reused down to the restore. So Habitat is a great place to send that dresser that you don't want anymore or whatever. So keep that in mind. I ran into Brian Costco the other day as he was deploying these markers. There's 3 of them. One's in front of the First Presbyterian Church. One of them is near Chase Bank, and another one somewhere in that vicinity as well, to where if you click on the QR code and then aim it at the courthouse, in one you'll see the Hebe fountain. In another one you'll see President Teddy Roosevelt when he stood on the steps, and the third one is that you will see a postcard view from 1914 of the courthouse. So Brian's doing great things with Invisible Ground, so encouraging people to check those out. I received an email and printed off this announcement. It's a survey for inclusive sports for Ohio youth with disabilities. I would encourage people to go to go.osu.edu/inclusive sports. This is a survey that is for kids, youth that are in grades K through 12, their parents or caregivers, as well as public school professionals. So I would encourage the parents in our community to check this out and be a part of this survey that's going on. I went through it. It's pretty simple and easy to do, but it's, again, to explore inclusivity of sports for individuals with disabilities. If Ryan would be so kind as to zoom in on this a little bit. There you go. I just want to show everybody, we have 7 new cruisers that are on their way or are here, and the police department has landed on that top color scheme. The vehicles themselves are black, so they had to figure out how to work in the some scheme for our new police cruisers. So that top image is what they'll look like. I know that you can't see this very well. There's very subtleties in the yellow and blue, but they're going to look sharp. Trust me.
Same to me.
The last thing I want to mention really quick, and he's here with us tonight, I received a 2-week notice of an individual who's done a great job working as the city intern for the mayor's office, Drew Longaberger. I personally want to thank you, Drew, for everything that you have done in terms of gathering information. You've done a great job as a city intern, and wish you the best of luck You still have plenty of time here at OU as a student, so hopefully you'll find other internships that'll continue to grow your knowledge base. But having come here from Reynoldsburg, serving the mayor of Reynoldsburg as a high school student and then working for me for a year, I'm sure, Drew, that your future is bright. You just got to finish 3 more years.
You guys can't get rid of me that easily.
Wouldn't want to.
Well, thank you from us as well, because you've provided a lot of information to council members. It's been helpful. So, thank you.
I can't think of enough.
Okay, we appreciate it.
That's all I have,
Okay,
President.
all right. We'll move on to ordinances for third reading. 3023 is an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to accept the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC, 2023 Energized Community Grant Funds, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 30-23.
Second?
Thank you, Member Grace. I'll go ahead and read some pertinent sections here. Whereas the City of Athens is a member of the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC, and is eligible for one or more NOPEC Energized Community, NEC, grants for 2023, as provided for in the NEC Grant Program Guidelines. And whereas the City of Athens has previously entered into a grant agreement with NOPEC Incorporated to receive one or more NEC grants. Section 1, the Council of the City of Athens finds and determines that it is in the best interest of the city to accept the NEC grants for 2023 and does hereby authorize the mayor to accept the NEC grant funds. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and second. Do we have any comments or questions from council members, administration, other elected officials, or our audience members? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 3123 is an ordinance amending the 2023 Appropriation Ordinance 15522, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 31-23.
Second.
Thank you, Member Ziff. I'll go ahead and read Section 1. The 2023 Appropriation Ordinance 155-22 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $26,100 to the General Fund Auditor for software upgrade, $5,348 to the General Fund Fire for service fees associated with the FEMA grant, $124,652 to the General Fund Fire for a FEMA grant award for hose and nozzle replacement, $5,431 to the Recreation Fund, donation from the Athens County Foundation Fall Grant Cycle to Arts West for Once Production, $500 to the Recreation Fund, a grant from the Thomas and Barbara Koster's Fund, Athens County Foundation for art instructors at Arts West, $4,000 to the Recreation Fund, a grant from the Klein Penny Education Fund for art instructors at Arts West, $5,735.83 to the Recreation Fund, a donation from the Greater Athens Soccer Association for a pair of soccer goals, and $2,000 to the Community Center Fund for childcare services and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to thank all of the grantors for these. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and second for approval. Any comments or questions from council members, administration, elected officials, or the audience? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 3323 is an ordinance granting a special right-of-way use permit at 758 West Union Street to Seven Generations LLC owner to place a new sign face on an existing light sign pole, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 3323.
Second.
Thank you. And this ordinance does pretty much exactly what the title states. It's granting a public right-of-way use permit under Title 49 to Seven Generations LLC, which is the owner on behalf of Sunbelt Rentals, the name of the business that is now there. And we've seen diagrams indicating the intended design of the sign that is to be placed on the existing pole. And we did confirm from the administration that the new sign is to be the same size as the existing sign.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from council members, administration, elected officials, or the audience? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have ordinances for second reading. 2523 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 11, Business Regulations, to add Chapter 11.13, Reduction of Single-Use Plastic Bags, introduced by Councilmember Swank. And do we have any comments from council members? And do we have a believe we have a comment from the audience.
My name is Lee Gregg, and I live at 16 Northwood Drive here in Athens. And as part of the Athens Rethink Plastic, we want to re-emphasize part of our mission statement is to help not only with the environment in reducing single-use plastic, but also with the business community, helping to make the transition if the ordinance banning the giving out of single-use plastic bags is passed. And as part of this effort, we are holding a bag drive. According to the published information, it appears that the average household has a surplus of reusable bags to the tune of 15 bags per household. Of course, this varies, and some households have very few or perhaps none. So what we're doing is holding a drive. They did this in Cuyahoga County as well. And so we will take in these bags, and we will only hand out, of course, clean, very acceptable bags. And we're going to be distributing them within the community. Hopefully we'll get a lot. And also in this effort for people to actually use the single-use, the reusable bags, we are going to be handing out stickers that people can put on their cars to remind them that those bags in their cars should be taken to the stores to be used to carry their shopping out.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to 3523. This is an ordinance authorizing municipal parking facility improvements, Phase 3, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. And if no comments, questions, or additions or changes, we will move on to the next ordinance, 3623. This is an ordinance authorizing participation in the Ohio Department of Transportation's Cooperative Purchasing Program, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for 36-23.
Second.
The reason for the suspension is that there's a deadline approaching of May the 1st. Under Section 7, it states the City of Athens acknowledges that should it wish to rescind this participation agreement, it will do so by written emailed request by no later than Monday, May 1st, 2023. So obviously we're under a timeline here to pass this, make it an ordinance in case we decide we don't want it.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
I think
Yeah,
so.
okay.
So we have a motion and second to suspend.
Yes.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? The rules have been suspended, Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt 36-23,
Second.
and for the reasons already stated.
Okay. And any additional comments or questions from council members, administration, elected officials, or audience? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 3723 is an ordinance accepting a land donation and easement from the Sheltering Arms Hospital Foundation, Inc., a nonprofit corporation for the West Union Street Improvements Project number 322, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Nothing.
No comments or questions. We'll move on to 3923. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to pay the 2023 membership fee for the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, known as ORCA, to provide financial support from the city's transient guest tax for the Bailey's Trail System, along with other recreational activities, introduced by Councilmember Crowell. And do you have some comments that you wish to make, Councilmember Spielness?
Yes. So I want to say up front that I am very much in favor of continuing paying our membership dues. So that's really not the question here. The question to me is how we move forward with this at this point. So I just want to say a few words about this. First of all, I talked with Mayor Renner from Chansey, who I asked her, what's this doing for your community? How is the Bailey's Trail helping you, etc. She is on the board, which obviously she has some say in this, but she stated several things that were very helpful to her community in particular. That ORCA, the ORCA members, and she highly praised Jessie Powers for all the work that she and her team has done. She talked about water and sewer extensions to the economic development site, 5 properties that are under commercial development in Chansey, with one in the Chansey-Dover School District, is nearing completion in 2024, that will provide a brewery, restaurant, B&B hub, street improvements to 9 streets, Phase 1 sewer line replacement project. Those are all in addition to having half the trails being completed, which is wonderful and a terrific record so far. And I think of the approximately, I believe I spoke with Jessie Powers also this week, or last week, I guess I should say, and she said about half of the 88 planned trails have been completed. She's here, she can correct me if I got that wrong. And the trailheads improvements have been done, Storybook Trail has been done, et cetera, et cetera. An impressive record in only a few years, and I'm very pleased, and I'm sure many people here are as well. So, therefore, let me move on. This has all been very effective, and I'm very pleased, and they have clearly met their goals. However, at this point, and I think with any organization of whatever kind, the first few years, the goals are to make money and to get some things accomplished. And clearly they have. They have met their goals and gotten things accomplished. However, at this particular juncture, it's important to look at what really needs to be done now. And as you transition into that nearing completion or getting closer to completion, it's important to start looking at the metrics that can measure economic development and the real impact on the economy of our communities. And that's ultimately a real goal. Of course, we appreciate that this helps people get in better shape, and I've spoken with people in the community who are incredibly grateful for the mountain biking opportunity, including Mayor Renner made a point of saying how it helped her family specifically, which is wonderful, and I appreciate that. But I would like to, going forward, I would like to add an amendment that requires the team to continue getting some metrics. One of the things we found out is that the report that was done by the Voinovich School talked about the accomplishments for the first year or so. That was a couple of years ago. And as we've learned, the trail counters have only been put in place in some of the trails and not in the ones that have been built the last couple of years. I would like to see that continue. They have a tremendous record of getting grants. So as part of that, I would think, and also Jesse Powers said that the university had promised to provide some trail counters and have not continued to do so. So I'm asking that they use their tremendous skills at getting grants to try to get some more trail counters and work with the university to make sure that that happens, and then find a way to have some additional metrics. So, and I spoke a little bit with Lisa Eliason before this, and she wanted to make some changes to what I was proposing, and I have it here, although I didn't make the corrections, there wasn't enough time. So what I would like to propose to add to the amendment and change the wording slightly is, and it's in front of you so you can take a look at it in red, although it starts at the beginning of the sentence, said authorization shall be contingent upon the agreement by Orca that by 2024 they will be regularly reporting the number of annual overall trail users and at least 2 other metrics, such as perhaps local lodging and restaurant tax receipts, that demonstrate the impact of that usage to the local economy. And then, I guess we should stop there or something, according to Lisa, and then put something to the effect, which is just repeating what was already in the original, that says that this is contingent upon the county of Athens providing a similar level of support as the city of Athens. Law Director Eliason, do you want to rephrase that in the way that you had mentioned that I didn't have a chance to write down?
What you just do is add "and" appropriated for the purpose and provide the same level of financial support. Contingent upon the same level of financial support by the County of Athens. Maybe just leave that sentence and take out the part that says and that the County of Athens provides the same level of financial support as the City of Athens. That makes it sound as if we're mandating the county provide the support, and this other sentence says the authorization is contingent upon the same level of support by the County of Athens. Maybe it's a distinction without a difference, but I thought it was a little clearer. Maybe there can be some discussion on it.
Okay. I will defer to you for sure on that. So if you're more comfortable with a slight rewording of that, that's fine with me. It's really just a
You could just
repetition.
end that usage to the local economy, period, and then keep that same sentence as the last sentence.
Oh, okay. Just leave the one that was there originally.
Maybe said authorization shall also be contingent upon the same level of financial support by the County of Athens.
Okay. Thank you.
I see our clerk writing this down. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So it takes this one. Got it. Okay, so that had been removed from the oriented text. Okay, okay. So we're taking out after local economy, period, then adding the sentence, said authorization shall also be contingent upon the same level of financial support by the County of Athens. Okay, so right now, are you making a motion to amend?
Yes. I thought I said.
Seconded.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We'll now open it up for discussion. We'll see if any other council members have a comment, and Mayor, I know you're ready to make a comment too. We'll move right on. Councilmember Grace, then the mayor.
I would just be interested in hearing from Orca on the feasibility of collecting data on 2 other measures, and also on challenges that may be presented as far as bird trail counters. I absolutely agree with the need for reporting and feedback and accountability, but I also know that sometimes when those of us in the role of making the rules, so to speak, we may not have a full understanding or grasp of the cost associated with complying with those rules. So I don't want to place requirements on Orca that are overly burdensome in whether in staff time or it costs to procure like the trail counters. And so I would just be interested in hearing some feedback on that.
Okay. And Mayor, do you want to do your comment before we hear from Jesse, or
Sure.
you would like to? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a few comments to make. What I'm looking at this being, an amendment to the ordinance. And I think it's time to take a quick ride in the Wayback Machine. 2016, when the Bailey Trail system, which really, I'm glad that former Councilmember Peter Kotsis is here tonight. It was basically Peter's brainchild to sit there and rethink the use of the Wayne National Forest, the 9,000 acres that is the developing trail system that we know today. 2017, with Quantified Ventures, we started understanding in better detail, President Nisley, you and I, thinking through the pay-for-success model of supporting the Bailey Trail system, to which we all agreed upon, in that this would be the right endeavor, understanding the economic impact, positive, that it would have on our county and the city. And that's where the $90,000 began, in talking about us and the county, each partnering to where, as long as the county was approving $90,000 a year for trail development, that the city would do so as well. In 2020, 2021 timeframe, and this is where I'm going to lean a little bit on the executive director, Orca decided that we were going to go from what was the pay for success way of having money going in, that Orca was going to be based on membership. That the county and the city's membership would continue on with that $90,000 moving forward, again, predicated upon, as law director indicated, the county having the same amount that they were bringing forward. There was a year when the county brought forward $35,000. We came forward with $35,000 as well. And then that transitioned back to 90, and I don't remember the details behind it, but I remember us doing that. I should have mentioned this on the front end, that I'm the chair of the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, so I serve on that. It's good to remind people that the board membership for Orca consists of the political subdivisions that are part of Orca and the Bailey Trail system, and that being the city of Athens, Athens County. It's Chansey, as you mentioned, Mayor Renner is a part of that, as is a township trustee from York Township, where the Doneville Trailhead exists. Nelsonville has been represented on Orca, as well as Bookdale. The mayor or president of city council of Bookdale also serving on Orca. So there are, for those of us who are seeing the impacts, we serve on the board, and we're advisory to Jesse Powers. So I wanted to get that clear out there for the public. The only thing that I think would be meaningful, aside from possible more trail counters out there on the newer trails or whatever, is possibly, and I say this possibly because there are so many factors that play into sales tax increases, restaurant receipts. We have the Athens Community Arts and Music Fest. That brings in a lot of people. We've had the Chamber of Commerce, or actually the Convention and Visitors Bureau, come in and report out, Boone Troyer, saying that there are more and more large motorcycle riding groups that are coming in and staying in the hotels, and that's relatively new that has started. That's not something to where we can sit there and go, well, let's pick a point in time being, 2017 or 2018 and use the transient guest tax as a starting point for that moving forward, because there has also been a lot of other parallel events that take place during the summer, take place during the year as well. since our portion, our payment has basically come from the transient guest tax, for us, for the city of Athens to sit there and look at any increases, whether it's linear or exponential, for the sales tax that we receive, we could use that as a metric of economic development, if you will, to the Baileys. But again, I caution you, because there's a lot of factors that can play into these changing. It's not a one-for-one as you look at this, but to look at restaurant sales receipts, which that would have to be a county function to sit there and come up with that, but the county has a sales tax, or a transient guest tax, as does the city. They're both the same amounts. We could continue to use that because that was one of the metrics we were going to use under the pay for success model of paying to where we were hoping to see an increase. So I wouldn't, I caution council to tie the hands of the operations for Orca to the point where there's going to be things that are predicated in here that are going to be difficult for basically an operation of 3 people that are running the show right now for the Bailey's Trail System and the Orca staff. So that's all I have to say about this particular amendment.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, I think to Steve's point, there's just really not a clear, easy way to collect that data. We would love for that to happen. And so when it comes to the trail counters, that was what we had installed for phase 1 of construction, which was 14 miles. However, this is a stacked loop system, so it's not a long trail that's connecting multiple communities. It's stacked loops on top of each other. That way you stay in the city of Athens, you go home for the night, take a shower, and you come back again tomorrow and ride all new trails. That's why we're building 88 miles. So with that in mind, there's multiple entrances because all of those trails are intersected by different roads. So to do the trail counters, you've got, once we're completely built out, even now, because we've gone from 14 to 49 miles, we have not been able to keep up with trail counter installation and moving those trail counters. And we've had meetings with our partners at OU about trail counters. And we're talking about 9,000 acres of land here and 88 miles of trails with multiple entrances. So it's really not going to be, until we have a huge team of interns or something, or I would love to have that task every day to go check the trail counters. But until we have, a larger staff capacity, using trail counters to get actual visitation data is going to remain a challenge just because it's going to take somebody that much time to go ride those every day. To collect that on a regular basis. And there is also an investment cost in that, but really the biggest challenge there is the long-term maintenance operations of those. The other way, because there's no clear data set that we can grab, we can, hire someone to do a specific study. So these are economic development professionals, these are research and statistics development professionals. So that is a bit of a barrier. Another option, which is what we've talked to our friends at OU about, which is definitely the dream, is to purchase cell phone data. There are third-party companies out there that sell that. I have a quote, and I've had a quote, which took about a year to track down, for $17,000 to $25,000 to collect that data. So I've also tried to suggest that would be a great planning project for the Appalachian Community Grant Program. So far, I haven't gotten anyone to agree with me there, but I'll keep trying, and it's absolutely, we don't shy away from the opportunity to collect and provide metrics about impact and visitation. We're confident, we're out there every day, and we know what's going on, we know our user groups, we know our volunteers, and we know the community, so it's just going to be how we can with, $90,000 a year seems like a lot. But one staff person with an OPERS and a $400 a month health insurance comes to about $75,000. So that's one person, essentially. We've got 3 folks that we have to find the funds to cover the bottom line once our grant's out in less than 2 years. And we really need those three folks to be high-functioning multitaskers as we are to kind of just finish what we have started. So I think we would love to provide more data, and we consider ourselves public servants, and we think that that's a great service that we'd be able to provide in the long term, but in the short term, in the immediate foreseeable future, we don't have that opportunity at our fingertips, but we'll absolutely continue to be pushing towards that. I think another thing for council to keep in mind is that the construction of the trails and what we've been awarded to date to develop the 5,000 square foot commercial facility at the Chansey Dover Trailhead and hopefully complete the Baileys as planned, it's probably going to take 2 to 3 years to complete those projects, just to do the contract administration and see those facilities be constructed and then opened and operating. I also think that, it's worthwhile to mention for council that, while ORCA, council's involvement in ORCA and ORCA's project, our pilot project to advance this regional strategy of utilizing outdoor recreation assets for intentional long-term economic growth and diversification, is an opportunity to unify counties, not just one city, not just one county, around a whole strategy and build relationships at the state and grow our economy to where we have a long-term strategy and relationship with the state so we can continue to see those investments. I think Mayor Patterson can agree that even this last round of Appalachian Community Grants, the city of Athens finally was able to put forward the Armory project and got that funded. So happy for you all. And then we put forward the Baileys project, a separate organization. We got both of those investments funded. So we really see this as, ORCA as fitting a regional need that's beyond one specific trail system. And we will absolutely continue to work forward on how we can best relay and that impact data. We're in touch with our Convention and Visitors Bureau and the business organizations and economic development professionals in the region, so we'll continue to figure out how we can address those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask a question?
Sure. Council, let's see if anybody else has any comments or questions before we come back. Yes. So we'll go Councilmember Crowell, then Swank, then back to Spillness.
And my comment is simply, thank you, President Isley, informational. The County Bikeway Committee had a member on the committee, and I'm a member, who was a professor of the geography department at Ohio University. And Dr. Lynch wrote a grant to purchase some counters that we've used on the bikeway, which is a nice long linear pathway. But those counters you have to physically go out to, and you have to actually remove the chip and download the data. It would be great, and I'm sure there's other counters out there that maybe you can get it through cellular, but it is a little bit of a task to get that data. It's great data, it's wonderful to have, and we really appreciate it, but it does take some labor to do that. That's it. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay. Councilmember Swain.
When talking with citizens of Athens about the Baileys, the overwhelming majority of people think it's a great program, a great project, a great future. But they want to know where our money's going and what are we getting for it. The study, which I've now read twice from cover to cover, was done during an unusual period, 2020 to 2021. And we've had nothing since, and we're approaching the second year. And if we were to go another year or 2 or 3, we're relying on data from what I'll consider an outlier period in time. And the comparison I'll draw is to what happened in the golfing industry. COVID hit in March of whatever, and things shut down. But once people figured out, you know what? Golfing is something that's done in isolation, and it's safe, and I can get out of my house. Golf numbers exploded in the second half of 2020 and 2021. Exploded. When Ohio University opened the golf course on August the 10th of 2020, not only was it in the best shape it's ever been in, you couldn't get on the course because people felt I could go out and walk, get my exercise, and do it safely. I don't know what those numbers are for golf the last couple of years. And we don't know what the numbers are for the Baileys for 21-22 or 22-23. And that's why I think it's very, very important that we pass this amendment tonight and allow you the flexibility, because it says, and at least 2 other metrics. Those aren't defined. I think the intent is to leave it up to your organization, because you're out there, as you said, every day to determine what those are. I know for a fact the county auditor can tell me what hotels in towns tax receipts are going up and down. I've looked at them before. Not the actual business, couldn't share that with me, but Hotel X, Y, and Z. That stuff exists already. It's just a matter of getting it from across the street. But I very much would like to see this accountability thing put into effect now, so you can continue doing the good job you've been doing of bringing people to Athens County. I think accountability is important today and not kicking this another year or 2 or 3 down the road.
Councilmember Spilnes.
Thank you. So I want to emphasize that I believe strongly in the Bailey's Trail and what Orca's been doing and has done. That is not the question here in my mind, and I'm guessing many others as well. However, I do want to have some kind of metrics in there, and I'd be happy to get some guidance from you on that. And I think what I did was try to leave it as open as possible so that we can just start having that conversation and you can see what works for you rather than require something very specific. Because I think the citizens of Athens are going to be more interested in this as we move forward and there's more trails being built. So that's really my hope at this point, is that by starting this process, that you can have information that will help guide you in making future decisions about where to build up and what amenities to have, et cetera. So, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Grace.
Thank you. I would, first of all, like to thank Ms. Powers for being here this evening and answering our questions. And also just to say that from the perspective of an organization that has been incredibly successful in obtaining grant funding, they absolutely know the value of collecting data and metrics that will support their application for future funding, because once the funding that they have now that is dedicated to specific trail construction or site construction, once that is gone and they are reliant on the membership fees from Orca, they will want to have relevant data to share, to include in their grants, the things that they're writing to continue to build and grow. So my position is that they have already proven their success and their with the number of grants and the funding that they have been able to procure, and I don't believe that this amendment is necessary, and I think that it could be overly burdensome. And I understand the value or like the intention in saying at least 2 other metrics, except then that I don't see that actually provides accountability, because it's like, well, I could say, okay, well, a metric is that I go count cars in one parking lot twice a year, and that is providing a metric. So if this doesn't give direction for something that actually provides accountability, other than the trail counters, which could really, like, to adequately count the number of users on the trails, either you have to have very expensive counters, which are not budgeted for, that would automatically relay the data, or have staffing to go out and collect that data. And so I have confidence in the folks who are working on this project that it is really in their interest there to make sure it continues to be successful. And in order to have that continued success, they will have to have metrics to convince other people to continue funding it. And so I think that they're doing a good job, and I think that we may not have the the right position or the right knowledge base to instruct them on how to collect data on relevant to their success. And also, in terms of lodging and restaurant tax receipts, as the mayor pointed out, those don't actually tell us much about the success of the Baileys necessarily, because it could be entirely different scenarios that are impacting. And so, yeah, so my position is that the amendment is not necessary at this time.
Any other comments before we return to Councilmember Spelness? Any other council members who want to make a comment? Councilmember McCary.
Oh, thank you, President Isley. I'll ask a quick question. If Ms. Powers can clarify any secondary measures that are helpful with grant applications. I'm not sure if that would be website traffic to the Bailey's Trails or something like that, but could you tell us what measures are most compelling when you apply for grants?
Yeah, it's really always been that we had the feasibility analysis on the front end, and we also had a base point. So most case studies that you see for outdoor recreation will not have that initial base mark that enabled that year one impact study. So really those are our two data points that we've been using, and it seems to not be problematic, even though it is the pandemic. I think that it's not even common to utilize those metrics in outdoor recreation development, or even talk about outdoor recreation development as asset-based economic development for rural communities. So we're really on the forefront, and being that's kind of how we got this national model title, is because we're at the beginning stages of this. So the fact that we had those projections, and that we did take that year one, and that we're still in this construction phase, growth phase, expansion phase, kind of deployment of the master plan to utilize ORCA to support the whole region and fill capacity gaps, has not been problematic for us with funders at this stage.
Thank you.
Councilmember Spelness.
Yes, I think, as I said earlier, it's up until now, your goals have been to get the trails done and to get the amenities done and the infrastructure done and all that. Those are the goals. Great. But I want to reiterate that as you move forward, and actually, Member Grace made this very clear, that it's going to be important for you to create metrics about economic impact as you're transitioning to this next stage. So as far as I'm concerned, what I'm proposing is a very common sense opportunity for you to understand the importance of this for council and for our taxpayers, since you're going to have to basically do it anyway. And regarding the metrics, I'd be happy to cross out the such as, because that was just a suggestion. We're going to count on you as a professional and to count on the experts that you have worked with at Voinovich, which I did, and the suggestion I received was that leave it up to you to determine what the metrics are, and that's fine. And again, it doesn't say you have to use those, it just says that it's important to have a couple of them. So I think it's important to get that process started for your sake as well as for the interests of our taxpayers.
In our mindset now, our metrics are securing the investment that we didn't have when ORCA was created to build this trail system. So, and we're securing the investments not just for the trails themselves, but for the things like the 5,000 square foot commercial facility that is going to provide us that long-term growth and expansion and those revenue streams to operate that facility, create that market access for folks in this community. There is no turnkey commercial facility in Chansey right now. So if we have that, we're removing a barrier. So, and then, we have our mountain biking. That was new. We've got that online very late last season. So, we have those things where we are trying to really implement the full plan, which has always been to find the funding to develop the assets, maintain them in a sustainable way, and engage the community and provide that shared stewardship experience. As well as utilize the nonprofit and impact investment to capture unique revenue streams to the trail system. So again, we don't shy away from reporting on economic impacts, and we kind of are looking at our big budget numbers, which since September of 2020, we're looking at $10.8 million in just the big ticket items of public and private investment. 9.1 of that is going directly to create lasting tourism infrastructure that will, generate visitors for the long term and events, et cetera. And then 1.5 million of that supports agencies like ORCA and our 2 additional positions, staff positions, Rural Action, ACENet, and our powers with advancing a regional economic development strategy around growing outdoor recreation and outdoor recreation tourism in communities.
Thank you. Councilmember McCary?
Thank you.
Yes.
It's just
one final comment, and
question.
then I think we're going to close and vote.
Thank you. This is a question for our law director in interpreting the language that's been proposed for the amendment. By 2024, they will be regularly reporting the number of annual overall trail users and at least 2 other metrics. I interpret regularly as being pretty flexible. That could be twice a year or even annually starting in 2024. I'm wondering if you share that interpretation.
I do. I asked members Feelness about that, and she stated that by 2024, they will be regularly reporting, meaning that when they come here again next year for their annual funding, that they'll be able to have some metrics. Is that right?
Yes, I'm seeing this as just getting started with this, not as a full year or anything like that. I'm leaving it very loose because I think it needs to be.
Thank you for that clarification. And for the final question.
Okay, we have an amendment proposed, and we have a motion and second for this. Yes. Oh, we have 2 comments. Yes, please, come up. We know who you are, but you should still announce it. Welcome back, former Councilmember Katsas.
And you're going to have to remind me, is it just 3 minutes?
Yep.
Comment?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And thank you. Thank you for the conversation. And Mayor Patterson, thank you for the kind words. I do want to mention that it wouldn't be without the leadership of Tony Scardina, who was the forest supervisor during that time, and the capable staff that he has, and Jason Reed and Don McCarthy, that did a lot of the heavy lifting to help make this happen. When I think about this, and I had a bunch of notes written down when I was walking my dog this morning, and thanks to the conversation, I don't really have to talk about a lot of them. Overall, I don't pay attention to what you folks are really doing up here very often, but it wasn't until I got a local story forwarded to me from people in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Colorado, West Virginia. As Jesse said, this is a national model, and people are watching this. And when we start to just drill down on the idea that we need to have certain metrics, this project is larger than the 9,000 acres. This is about a region. It's yes, we're trying to get one thing set in place, but we don't know where we're going to be done with this. I mean, and the reason that this started was because we had a very good trail planning company come in and really design this thing to work better than anybody else. So basically, right now, when you look at mountain biking, specifically that outdoor recreation, there's nothing like this that exists in Ohio. There really isn't anything like this that exists in West Virginia. The ability to capture people is I just can't even imagine how many people we're going to see here. And you look at Hocking Hills. The Hocking Hills Tourism Association, I'm sure you folks already know, they estimate 5 million people come to their county. To put that in perspective, 4.8 million went to Yellowstone last year. Maybe the numbers from Hocking County might be a little bit high, but what if it's only 4 million? What if it's only 3 million? I mean, when you drive to Columbus, look at all the infrastructure, all the canoe liveries, the zip lines, the malls that are out in the middle of nowhere, and that's all supporting that outdoor asset that they have. There's no reason to say that we can't pick and receive some of that, because right now we have something that they can't offer, and in a region where we have so much population, they don't have access to it. And really the biggest thing that I wanted to really come in and get everyone to be thinking about is, you folks have 800 some acres of public park space. Do you have a trail plan? And I know you can't answer me right now, but do you know what you folks are doing, within the city? Because you have this partner that you already, are part of this organization. They seem to be very good at finding funds. What do you folks want to do? Because you have access from a neighborhood into a state nature preserve into a state park. I'd be really interested to know how many other towns in the state of Ohio have that option, have that opportunity that really sets you apart and gives you, an additional thing that makes Athens Athens. And I've been recreating on those trails out of Sells Park for 30 years. Before it was a state nature preserve. This is going back. I think that they were originally burned in there with motorcycles back in the 70s. And so there hasn't been a lot of change in that trail system. And, 30 years ago, I saw a lot of those trails. They could be so much better. Your access and getting all of those, getting basically a recreation asset that is, much better than what you currently have. There's an opportunity here. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I really wanted to talk about. But I do want to stress that this is so much bigger than the Baileys, and it's a ripple effect. When you say what are our citizens getting out of this, the village of Chansey's trying to secure $9 million to do improvements to their wastewater and their sanitary sewer. We're downstream from Chansey, so I would say that would be a win for Athens if they're able to improve that system. So, these are the kind of things that we need to think about as we see something like this that can really make a lot of change, not only on the ground with the trails, but throughout the whole region.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Rob Delac, live in the city here in Morris Avenue. I think it was last week at first reading, I already made one of my points, which is that I think this is an onerous requirement. An economic study to get at any kind of metrics like we're talking about is very difficult to tease out. Others have said that. Studies to get at the actual impacts of projects like this, $100,000 is not out of line. And even the cell phone data alone, as you heard a quote, was $17,000 to $25,000. You have to have then somebody take that data and make some sense of it. That takes somebody with a lot of hours to do. It's a lot of money to ask right now for Orca to develop these metrics. You're paying $90,000. It's not that much money. People like me had to come to these meetings repeatedly en masse to convince city council to spend the $90,000. We've done that. For years we did that to get that to where we are today. I don't want us to see it take a step back here. This commitment is important, and granted, it is good to have data. I'm a data guy. I love data. But this is an onerous requirement. It's unnecessary at this point in time. The original, my recollection is the original development timeline for the system was that in 7 years there would be a study done, because at that point the system would be in place and you could actually conduct a study to get some kind of results. 7 years in, that was the plan. The pay for success model fell through partly because the city council and the county refused to commit to a 20-year commitment for the $90,000 a year. That's why we didn't end up doing that mostly. There might have been other factors. One of the big ones was the city council and the county wouldn't commit to 20 years for this project. And so we had to go back to a grant-funded project, grant-funded system, which takes longer to get where we're trying to go. So don't put up roadblocks for this project. And again, one other point I want to make is Orca is much bigger than just the Baileys. So like Pete mentioned, it's about local and regional recreation. And they're starting to get their hands into those kind of things as well. But to get the Baileys going and get this essentially first build out done is really the main goal. But there's a lot of additional impact that's going to happen from this organization. This $90,000 is going to be, it's going to be amplified many, many times over as far as revenue coming into the city and the region. And so I'd like to encourage you not to put these requirements in here yet and consider this later down the line possibly, or maybe look at year 7 as a hard line, talk to Orca and figure out that still makes sense. But I agree with Sarah that I think this isn't the right time to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Patterson. Okay.
I want to propose to council a potential solution to this, and that being that Orca and the monies that is going to Orca is treated the same as it is for the Athens County Economic Development Council, as well as to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and that being that their executive directors give a report out to council and just talk about successes, growth, as well as return on investment. So I'm just throwing that out there. You know, there's a reason why it's called the Appalachian Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia. And that is because it isn't Athens-centric, as you've heard several times. You know, there's no reason why Orca can't start to explore our better use of the Hocking River that runs through the city of Athens. Or, as Peter Kostas was mentioning, you know, the Sells Park Trail System. So, and those are things that could be quantifiable just by reporting out that successful in getting a grant for something or something along those lines. So it's just a different way of viewing it. We do the same for Molly Fitzgerald. We expect that from Molly, and we expect it from Boone Troyer.
Thank you. Yes, and we've been probably 40 minutes on this discussion, so last comment here by Councilmember Swank, and then I'd like to call for the vote.
That's it.
Yes.
I will yield and then come back.
One sentence. The definition of economic impact means the direct financial result of visitor spending at a tourism destination, attraction, or event. It's not how many trails you've done. It's the impact of visitor spending. That's all I'm asking for.
Okay. And Councilmember Swank.
We're talking about $90,000 of taxpayer money. We are charged to be accountable with that money. Hence the simple request for verifiable data.
Okay. Councilmember Reisner.
I just have to throw this in here. This thing about taxpayers' money is being banded back and forth. This is a transient guest tax. Transient guests, people who come and go, that's where the money's coming from. It's not coming out of my pocket. It's not coming out of yours. It's coming out of guests that come here. That's what we're trying to get. We're here to promote tourism. That's why we had the transient guest tax. This is promoting tourism, isn't it? I mean, it kind of seems like what it's all about. So, I've said it. I just had to get that out.
Okay. Motion
Thank you for
and
letting me
second.
vent.
Thank you. Motion and second that we have for the amendment. All those in favor of amending the ordinance signify, I would like you to raise your hands, please. Okay. 2. And those against the amendment? Okay, to 5. All right, the amendment fails. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for your comments and your explanations, too.
So we could spend that $90,000.
We will move on to ordinance 4023. This is an ordinance amending the 2023 appropriation ordinance 15522, introduced by Councilmember Crowell. If no comments or questions, then we will move on to ordinance 4123. This is an ordinance amending Section 5, retirement of Ordinance 14822, the 2023 Fringe Benefits Package for non-union personnel within the City of Athens. This is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. No comments or questions. We will move on to 4223, an ordinance accepting a 25-year sanitary sewer line easement from Ohio University located in the Dairy Lane area for the city-county sewer expansion, project number 317, introduced by Councilmember McCary. And if no comments or questions, we will move on to 4323, an ordinance accepting a limited sewer and water line easement from Catherine and Jane Shagno and Carrie J. Griffin, North Blackburn Road, for the city-county sewer expansion project number 317, introduced by Councilmember McCary. We now have several ordinances for first reading. 4423 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code, Title 7, Traffic, Chapter 7.05, Parking Regulations, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And this is the ordinance that was discussed last week in committee. And it is to amend our traffic code, specifically the section relating to private towaway zones, so that our local code is not in conflict with state law. The changes include adding this section that states the owner of a private property may establish a private towaway zone, but may do so only if all of the following conditions are satisfied. And that is then followed by a list of conditions. And the first one is that the owner of the private property post on the property a sign that is at least 18 inches by 24 inches in size, that is visible from all entrances to the property, and that contains at least all of the following information. So that most of that statement is currently in our code. It just adds in that the owner is the owner of the private property, just for clarification that we are talking about private towaway zones. And then the new language that is added that is to be included on those specific signs are that, one, if the towaway zone is not enforceable at all times, then the times during which the parking restrictions are enforced must be included on that sign. And it also must include the telephone number and the address of the place from which a towed vehicle may be recovered at any time of the day or night. And those are the changes in the additional language to the private towaway restrictions.
And I just have a question on the language on 1C. If the private towaway zone is not enforceable at all times during which the parking restrictions are, should that be two separate words in space?
Or enforced, perhaps with the D.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get that clarified into the next reading. And any questions or comments from council members? Staff, elected officials, for our audience. We will move on now, thank you, Councilmember Grace, to 4523, an ordinance amending the 2023 appropriation ordinance 15522. This is introduced by Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, President Isley. As introduced at committee, I'll go ahead and just read Section 1. The 2023 Appropriation Ordinance 155-22 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sum: $10,000 to General Fund Fire for a SCBA equipment grant from the Department of Commerce, Division of State Fire Marshal, and increasing the total appropriations by the same amount. Our fire department has been doing a wonderful job to acquire these grants, and this is for needed safety equipment. Thank you, President Isley.
If none, we'll move on to 4623. This is ordinance amending ordinance 1523, authorizing the auditor to make interfund transfers, introduced by Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, President Isley. As discussed at committee, this amends the previous ordinance, which transferred $400,000 from the water fund to the water debt fund, and in fact, only $396,000 was necessary. So this is amending that from $400,000 to $396,000. Thank you.
No comments or questions. We will move on now to 4723. This is an ordinance amending the Fire Department 2023 staffing levels authorized by Ordinance 14722, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, President Isley. As discussed at committee, the fire department also received a grant to fund 2.5 firefighters for 2 years. And it is necessary to amend our staffing levels to incorporate these new firefighters. And the plan, as you'll see here on the addition to the ordinance, is to change the firefighter category in our staffing ordinance from 15 to 18. However, there is a note there that this would sunset to 15 firefighters through attrition. So this gives the fire department the ability to have new people coming on when people are in training, and as people retire and or leave the department, be able to fill those positions with firefighters temporarily until it's necessary to go back to the 15 firefighters. Thank you, President Leslie.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councilmember Swank?
I believe at the last meeting, Member Ziff, I think, asked the question, why not make this permanent? Is that correct? Okay, I just want to make sure. 7 of us there, I couldn't remember for sure, but I thought you had made that question. And driving home last Monday night, I thought about that, and well, that might make sense, but I needed more information. And as promised, Mr. Stone provided us with some very, very, very detailed and informative information about overtime. Went all the way back to 2011. Did everybody see that? Everybody take a good close look at that. What jumped out to me was a tremendous increase in overtime since 2011. 2011, 21 firefighters accumulated 3,049 hours of overtime. 21 firefighters, 3,049 hours of overtime. Then it went to 3808, then 4546, then 4849, then 5703, then 6749, and on and on and on till we get to 2022, 24 firefighters, 9,134 hours of overtime for a total of $426,000. Why not make it permanent? Because it's obvious we have the need for personnel to serve the city. For anyone who's ever worked a union job or a job where you can get overtime, you know that after a period of time, overtime will begin to take its toll, both physically and mentally. And if we have firefighters working this many hours of overtime, what toll is that taking on them from both a physical and a mental standpoint? And what potential danger is it placing the buildings and the citizens of Athens in if we have firefighters working that many hours? Can they be at their best for 9,134 extra hours when they have to make split-second decisions? Why not make this permanent?
Do we have any other? Yes, Councilmember Spielness.
Yes, I share that concern. I did speak with Chief Reimer today about this, and a couple of other things that were raised was that, and actually I remember hearing this before, in 1972 we had 21 firefighters. Since then we've grown substantially, to say the least. In 1997, we had 5,600,000 and some thousand square feet of building residential, and about that commercial, a total of 10,000 something square feet of building space. Today, we have 14,000, or excuse me, in 2020, there was 14,288 plus square footage of coverage that a building they have to cover. So the point being is that they have a lot more work and not as many firefighters as they need. What he told me was that he was doing some looking into what best practices were by those who are expert at that sort of thing. And he's also looking at seeing if we can get some student fees. The university can add student fees for fire coverage, and some other measures to see what they can do to add to staffing levels on a permanent basis. But it is a concern, and it is something we need to think about today and long term.
And any comments at this point from administration?
Thank you, President. I'm always at the fire department. At the end of the day, it's a function of revenue that comes into the city, and our ability to maintain that number of staff. If you're gonna grow full-time people, you want to do it in a sustainable manner. I think right now we're doing pretty well in the unappropriated balance in the general fund. Some of that unappropriated balance is there as residue from the CARES Act money that was deposited there and then not spent. While I echo what Member Swank and Member Spildness are saying, and that we definitely could use the additional man. I mean, the chief would tell you today we should double the number of firefighters we have on staff in order to meet NFPA standards. It's just not a financially feasible thing to do when we balance the other demands in the city. To say that this growth of 3 not being sunset is a step towards a goal. It's a step towards a goal. I will continue to look closely every year at our revenue and our expenditures, and see if this were to make a dent, and if you were to pull that particular provision, I still would come back to you, 2 years from now and say we should keep it at 18 or we should lower it. So if you want to not have it automatic and pull it out, it's not something that I'll argue with. But knowing that we have other priorities as well, and I'm getting ready to talk to you in a minute about a fire station that's a capital expense. It's going to be extremely expensive, and so that's what we balance, right? I mean, a fire truck costs millions of dollars when you buy a fire truck, and so you got the people and you got the stuff you need to do the people's job, and those are always the two things we balance.
Thank you. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. Director Stone, would you agree that this grant for the 2.5 firefighters is a good opportunity to sort of see how this is working out? That this may not be a need that we should address immediately, but we can look, as you're saying, over the next few years and make a decision on what the staffing level should be. I'm all in agreement that we should have safety services that fit our city and that make our property, et cetera, and people as safe as possible. But it seems like we have a period of time here where we can look at this closely, especially with the new fire station and new response times and all these things, to make a good decision in the coming years. Does that seem to make sense?
Member Crowell, thank you for the question. And I want to give great credit to Chief Reimer for the foresight and the effort that he's put into reaching out and securing this. I mean, a less capable chief wouldn't even take the time and put in the effort to go after these external funding sources. We're very, very fortunate in the city of Athens to have someone of his caliber that he found this, and that it does give us that breathing room as we go and get through the natural. We had a large growth in our department in the mid 1990s. And now all of those people are leaving. And it created conditions where, as I talked to you when you introduced this ordinance, or when we talked about it in committee about the number of vacancies we have for people that don't count towards minimum staffing of 4 on the shift. And that's really what drives the overtime numbers is when you don't have people available to count to those minimum staffing at 4 at all times on any shift, that triggers a need to go and either mandate or offer overtime for people to come in and cover those shifts. So, I can go either direction. If you want to leave the sunset clause in, and then I argue why we should keep it 2 years from now after looking at the numbers, or the flip side of it is 2 years from now I can come back and say, hey, I think we should keep them in, or we should pull them back out when we're doing the staffing ordinance at the end of a given year. So.
Okay. All right. Yes. Any other comments? All right, 4823 is an ordinance authorizing design, construction, and construction engineering of the Dairy Lane Stagecoach Sewer as part of the City-County Sewer Expansion Project number 317, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Nisley. You've heard about project number 317 for quite some time, and even in two earlier ordinances. This is just part of our ongoing project process. And we have in section 2 that the 2023 appropriation ordinance 155-22 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $85,000 to Street Fund 220 for sidewalk design and construction, $1,166,306 to Water Fund for water line construction, construction engineering, and contingency, $4,854,495 to the Sewer Fund for sewer easements, construction engineering, and loan fee, and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Section 3, the Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $6,450,801 for said project as follows: $85,000 to Street Fund 220 for sidewalk design and construction, $1,211,306 to Water Fund for water line construction, construction engineering, and contingency, $5,154,495 to the Sewer Fund for sewer easements, construction engineering, and loan fee.
Any comments or questions? If not, we'll move on now to announcements and other business. We will be having a committee meeting possibly next week. At this point, I don't think we have any agenda items. If there are agenda items, we need to get them to the council clerk by
3 o'clock tomorrow?
3 o'clock tomorrow. It's a shorter work week this week, so we need to move things ahead, and there may not be any other matters before council. We have two motions under our other business, the first of which is a motion to remove 1123 from the table. And this was originally authorized, this is 1123, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contract for construction of the new fire headquarters, Project 346, and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Nisley. As folks have heard and been keeping up with, the expenses associated with the cost of constructing our new fire station headquarters have continued to increase, requiring some different expenditures and allocations that I believe all members of council have received.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But we need to remove it from the
Oh,
table
yes.
first.
So
We do have the motion. We need the motion, and we need a second.
I would like to move that we remove ordinance 1123 from the table.
Second.
Okay, all right. And we'll take the vote on that right away first. Okay, so all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, it's been removed from the table.
Thank you, President Isley. I summarized already that this is just the result of needing to come up with more financial support for this project, as outlined in the updated ordinance. I can read section 2 and 3 if that would be most helpful for folks. Or for the record.
Amend. There'll be a motion to amend.
We
Yes.
do need to amend, and then we can bring up the discussion, and I believe Service Safety Director Stone also has some information that he can perhaps review this for folks and explain it.
And I will be happy to move that we amend 1123.
Second.
Okay, and that amendment was provided to council members in writing prior to the meeting, and so we have that here for discussion. So a motion and second to amend, and are there any other comments at this point? Okay. Yeah, Councilmember Swank.
I'm having a little trouble doing the math here, some of the cross-outs and additions. This is amending it from what amount to what amount total? We're going from where to where?
It's doubled.
Wow.
10,013.
So so section 3, the first paragraph, that's the
Yes.
operative.
Right. that's-
And by doing that, are we able to get what we had originally planned?
Okay, should we-
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. We're all waiting.
There's lots of reds and cross-outs.
So section 3 is
It's bleeding.
the operative change ultimately in the total authorization. Like when we say, what does this thing cost in total? You know, that little paragraph at the beginning of section 3 is the portion that lets
So
you.
it went from 10,270 to 13,670.
Correct.
And with that, are we able to get what we had originally planned?
Right, so, and I can go ahead and go through the litany of kind of explanation that I think will help put this all into perspective, because this won't be the last time you see this ordinance, unfortunately.
And I think that the explanation now will help while we're considering these amendments. Thank you.
Should I
Go ahead.
proceed?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much, President Nisley. So, this has been somewhat of an arduous effort to get to this point. I think in hindsight, had we known that we were be trying to build, at least a 50-year building, that's gonna serve Athens for the next 5 or 6 decades. Because the old one is falling down, we would have started when the old one started to fall down 15 years ago, as opposed to right now, which is in the peak of construction inflation. And so it's not the ideal time, but we're dealing with it. And I think we're still knocking down barriers every day as we get closer to delivering this project. This ordinance was delayed previously while we were awaiting the purchase agreement to get approved by the Ohio Department of Administrative Services and the Controlling Board. That was delayed, as I shared with you during the committee meeting, actually several times. Ultimately, that passed here over the Controlling Board meeting in the beginning of April, and so now that purchase agreement has been approved and has been signed by the Director of Ohio Administrative Services, or Ohio Director of Department of Administrative Services, and now can be attached and incorporated herein as noted in section 1. While we were waiting, we did open bids on this project. Obviously, we couldn't award it because we didn't have an authorization and an appropriation to do so. But we went ahead and stuck with that bidding timeline, understanding that we couldn't award it until after council passed the legislation once that controlling board action happened. And we found that no bid was within 10%. Actually, no bid was within 20% of the architect's estimate. The architect's estimate, when we opened those bids, was $9 million. For construction from this point forward, and the lowest bid we had was $11.5 million. The highest bid we had was $13.5 million. And so the law requires a public entity to be within 10% of the design professional's estimate, and we were not. And so we basically didn't go back entirely to the drawing board, but we went back to relook, talk to some of the bidders, try to find out what were some of these major cost drivers, made some changes, and now the new bid opening is scheduled for April 27th. We've changed the architect's estimate to $11.8 million. There are actually a couple more plan holders that we're hoping will bid. We had 3 bids the last time. I'm hoping to see 5 or 6 large construction companies go after that. And again, my hope is that because we are, I think, closer to in the ballpark of what things actually cost, number one, and number two, we've got more competition, that we'll actually see bids underneath that architect's estimate of 11.8. So when we look at what we're appropriating actually for construction, of the building going forward. It's $12.4 million, so authorizing and appropriating. 8.4 of that comes from the safety services bond, and that we borrowed money, with $600,000 have already been committed for the purchase of the property and the site prep, which has been ongoing. So that's that first 8.4 million that you saw in the original ordinance. In order to reach our level that we need to reach to be able to deliver this project, we're asking for this an additional $4 million. To take us to that 12.4 million, and 3 million of that will come from the general fund, and 1 million of that will come from the ARPA fund. That said, discussion with the Finance and Personnel Committee Chair, President Council, and the Auditor's Office, we believe it's most prudent to actually borrow this and basically expand the bond that we had let before. And so at some point in the future, but this will place, if you pass this tonight, this will put money in place that we can go ahead and get under contract. And then if this body decides to go ahead and do another bond offering and borrow against the safety services levy, we will come back to you with an amendment to this ordinance, 01123, a couple of months from now after those bond proceeds come in, and we will strike that appropriation from the general fund for the additional $3 million and the $1 million from the ARPA fund, and instead do it out of bond proceeds, and then proceed to pay back the bond over time with the money that comes in from the safety services levy. So basically that keeps that cash that's currently in the general fund and the ARPA fund available for other uses. And then the bond proceeds ultimately are what pay for construction. But in order to have money on hand and appropriated to award a project, we're asking you temporarily to appropriate this $3 million and this $1 million. And then, like I said, if the body so desires to pass the ordinance that'll allow for that extra bond issuance, then that's the way that we're recommending that we proceed. I think that explains everything and hopefully captures what we're attempting to do. My fingers are crossed, and we're working very hard with the architect and answering questions from prospective bidders to get a good product when this opening happens here in a week and a half.
Okay. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. Quick typo, the word in the amounts in section 3 that are written out in words, the word thousand needs to be inserted between 70 and dollars in 2 instances.
Yep.
I am with Member Swank in having my head swim a little bit with the crossing outs and the red and et cetera. I think I've got the big picture. But Director Stone, if you could explain quickly, in section 2, we have appropriated with the new amendments 12.4 million, as you remarked. And in section 3, we're authorizing to expend 13.67. Can you explain the discrepancy, that $1,270,000?
Yes, thank you, Member Crowell. The those $1.27 million came from $600,000 that you appropriated in Ordinance 8422 for design and construction management services, and $70,000 that you appropriated in Ordinance 18.20-22, and then also $600,000 for land purchase and site preparation that you authorized by Ordinance 121-22. So basically, you've authorized that 1.27 million in other, correction, you're not authorized them, you authorized them as well back then, but you appropriated those in those 3 other ordinances. This ordinance only appropriates the additional money and then authorizes the full amount.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, so crossing out at the bottom of that, why doesn't the $9 million include the $8,400,000? It's crossed off on my sheet.
It may not be supposed to be crossed off. $9 million from, okay, because, I understand your question. So the 8.4 was what was just sitting there, prior to this amendment, and as far as being authorized. Let's see, just by saying $9 million from the Safety Services Fund 206.208 TC 500, that captures that 8.4. And then it makes reference to that previous 600,000 that was authorized by 12122. And I'm looking at the clerk to make sure that I said that correctly. Okay.
Should it or shouldn't be crossed out?
I believe Mr. Stone is saying it's correct and that it's crossed out.
It should be. It should be.
I think it does read a little bit funny because both of those amounts were previously, both the 8.4 million and the 600,000 are part of that 9 million. But only that 8.4 is being crossed off, and it's a bit confusing, but.
Sure, the second, I mean, think of it this way, the reference to the 600,000 is just to draw attention to the fact that it had been previously authorized. And the total is 9 million, which captures that 8.4 in this particular ordinance.
Works for me if it works for you.
Well,
Okay. And did,
And
our clerk
clerk,
says
yeah,
this is
sorry,
correct.
you can-
We turned to the expert
Thank
here
you.
too. Yes,
You got the
Councilmember
word.
The, as to where this $4 million is going to come from, is a question many households ask every day. Obviously not in these two large numbers, but do we deplete our reserves or do we borrow money? If we go the bond route and borrow money, how much more than $4 million are we going to need to pay back? Or how much money are we going to have to pay in interest? Let me just put it that way.
Sure, I can do the math and the actuarial tables, and provide that exactly. You know, right now, we're looking at if this were all to go forward, it would be $13 million in bonds. Over the course of the 20-year levy, assuming that we've got modest growth and we can make some assumptions on modest growth, you know, I think we'll bring in, 18, 19, possibly more $1 million in that. So there should be about, 5 to 6 million additional that would be available. But like I said, I can do the actuarial tables and what the mayor's.
Yeah, Mayor Patterson.
We can get you the actual percentage. Baird did provide what that percentage would be, and I'm going purely off of memory, but I think it was in the 3.75 range, for interest. But let me get you the actual numbers.
Certainly don't want to empty the bank account, but $4 million and the interest with it. And again, that's nothing we're going to be deciding tonight. You've made it very clear that's a decision council makes down the road as to how to do it. But I was just curious.
And certainly I'll have those actuarial tables well in advance of asking you to make an amendment to this ordinance that would then, put that money back into those funds and instead take bond proceeds.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, so where we are right now, we've removed it from the table. We've got a motion and second to suspend.
No,
Or to amend, excuse me.
Right.
Step ahead of myself. We've had the discussion, so with no other questions, then we'll go ahead and vote on the amendment as explained by Service Safety Director Stone. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. And now, we can move to suspend.
See,
We'd have to suspend, okay. I will move to suspend ordinance 1123.
Second?
Okay, and the reason for this being is that suspending tonight and approving this would enable the Service Safety Director to move forward with, when the bids do come in and with beginning construction. So we have a motion and second. All those in favor for suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended, Councilmember McCary.
Thank you.
Now-
Oh, yes, I will make a motion to adopt ordinance 1123.
Okay,
Second.
okay.
And I do just want to acknowledge the public's patience in understanding the evolving nature of this project and its expenses, and really big thank you to Director Stone for all of the revision work you've done.
It's not built yet.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any other comments or questions? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved.
And of course, it had an emergency clause on it.
All right, great, thank you. We now have a motion to, our next ordinance for consideration is 1123, with potentially a motion to remove that from the table. This is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contract for construction of the new fire headquarters, project number 346, and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember McCary.
That was the one we
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's the one we just did.
1723.
I'm sorry, it's getting late. I'm sorry. It's okay. Motion to remove from the table, right. 1723 is an ordinance amending certain sections of the Athens City Zoning Code, Title 23, Chapter 23.04, Permitted Uses, Sections 23.04.04, A1. This is for B1 Neighborhood Business Zone and 23.04.07, 1 and 3. This is B3 General Business Zone, and this is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. I would like to make a motion that we remove 01723 from the table.
Seconded.
Okay.
Thank you. And then we have discussed this in significant detail. On our drive, we have 2 copies of the ordinance 1723 as it was introduced, and then ordinance 1723 with the amendments that I talked through last week in committee meeting. And so I believe the next step is to make a motion to amend 01723.
But before we do that, we have to vote.
We need to vote.
So we've
Yes.
made the motion to remove.
was like,
All those in
it's been-
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's been removed from the table. Councilmember Grace.
So, yes, I was skipping ahead. There are too many motions. Yeah, so motion to amend 01723.
Second. Second.
I was like, now what?
Still swimming over here.
Thank you, Member Swank. This amendment includes a paragraph 3 under B3 General Business Zones. These are principal permitted uses. Paragraph 3, as amended, would read that restaurants and drive-in or drive-through restaurants, provided that for any drive-in or drive-through restaurants, the speaker box or location where the business interaction with the persons in their vehicle takes place shall be at least 200 feet from any R1 or R2 zone. And it also adds paragraph 4 that specifies that drive-in or drive-through establishments are permitted in this B3 zone, provided, again, that the speaker box or location where the business interaction with the persons in their vehicle takes place at least 200 feet from any R1 or R2 zone. And then it further includes definitions that were previously absent in our code. And the first definition added is a definition for a drive-in or drive-through establishment, which is defined as any retail or service establishment that provides a designated place where persons can drive their vehicles in such proximity to the establishment that they can or are permitted to conduct the major portion of their business with the establishment without having to exit their vehicles. And a definition for a drive-in or drive-through restaurant is also added, and it is simply that it is a restaurant that is also a drive-in or drive-through establishment. The third change was just to update the definition of a restaurant. And the language for restaurant would now read, an establishment where food and drink are prepared and sold for human consumption on or off the premises. Those are the changes from the amendment to the ordinance. And the ordinance as originally introduced also includes that in both B1 and B3 zones, outdoor dining shall be permitted. I think that.
All right, and any comment? We have a motion and second for amending.
Comment
Do we
down
have any
here.
comments or questions?
This is super minor, but under 230404, it says A, and then general conditions A, and then 3. I'm wondering if we've got some numbering issues that, again, super minor.
We're not amending number 2.
What?
We're just amending 1 and 3.
Okay, but you don't have to show it here?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we have the motion and second for amending. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries, and the ordinance has been read for the first time. And we.
I have not heard any requests
tonight.
to suspend this.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
No need.
All right, we'll now move on. We have 3 other items of business where motions are needed. The first one, and we appreciate some of the members of the Athens Pedestrian Accessibility Plan for being here so late tonight and for waiting through all the discussion. So this first item is the motion to accept the Athens Pedestrian Accessibility Plan. We received the final copy earlier this week, and it looks beautiful, complete with artwork by Joe Brumfield, yeah, and so it just looks great. Yes, Councilmember Reisner.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the Athens Pedestrian Accessibility Plan.
Second.
Do I need to recuse myself since I worked on it?
No.
Just want to be
I
correct.
don't think you do need to in
Okay,
this particular
just wanna
case.
make sure.
It's just a motion to accept.
Should be the only no vote.
Okay,
Anyone care to speak to it?
sure. Come on up. Our chair, the chairperson of the,
Thank you, all of you. As you can tell, we put a lot of work into it, a lot of thought into it. And it's not really just our voice, it's the voice of the community. And I think that that's like one of the major things that I've learned is that this is such an important issue for this community. And it's something that we really have a directive from them to make some action happen. So I appreciate that all of you are looking at this and thinking about helping our infrastructure improve. I know it's going to take time. I know it's going to take money. I know it's going to take a lot of planning. This document really will help to understand what are the issues people have thought about. Our community knows our sidewalks, so helping to put that in place is really important. I did want to thank. It's really the right thing to do. I wanted to thank the ad hoc committee members once again: Rob Delac, Solveig Spelness, Neil Ryan, Mayor Steve Patterson, and Stephanie Hunter. They were a really dedicated team to work on this. And we had many, many others that collaborated. So we met with Jeff Reisner multiple times. We met with the Disability Commission. We did, we met with the Shade Tree Commission. We are members of it. So we really tried to, we met with the university people. We were at the farmers market. We were at a lot of places trying to get input on this. So I feel like it sort of is. We feel like Athens can be that model city. Like you were talking earlier about the trails. I think the infrastructure for sidewalks and crosswalks, Athens could be that accessible city that everyone really can use. So we just have to put that in place. and putting pedestrians first will really make a difference. So thank you for that. I don't know if I can do another one. Dr. Carolyn Bailey Lewis was going to come tonight, but she was unable to attend. So she wrote a statement. Can I read that into the minutes, or is this too long? I don't know what your practice is.
Do you have some highlights of it? Or
I think she mostly was trying to say that she has a unique position here in Athens. She's been a wheelchair user, she's been a walker, she's used a cane, she's used every different kind of mode of transportation here. And that she really believes that sidewalks are getting worse in many cases, and that she's nervous using our sidewalks. She often ends up on the streets. It doesn't feel like it's a safe place to be. And she writes, I conclude by telling the story you might have heard before. Many years before Mayor Patterson was elected mayor, I was on one side of Court Street and he was on the other. I stopped and he was looking at me. I was turning around and going up and down, trying to figure out where the curb cut was. There was none. I yelled across the street, this is why you need to become mayor, so we can get some of these things fixed. And that she also knows it's a process, but she wholeheartedly approves and supports that this would take place.
Thank you. And if you'll get us a copy of that, we'll include her statement with our minutes then,
Great.
so we have it entered into the record. So
All right.
thank you so much, all of you, for
Thank
all
you.
the time you put into it. Great. Okay, so we had the motion and second. All those in favor of accepting the report? Signify by saying
Aye.
Okay, wholeheartedly. Okay. Next,
that's
we
just
have
the
a
beginning.
motion equally important, but not nearly as interesting, is the motion to accept the March 23 financial reports.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then we have an appointment to the Environment and Sustainability Commission.
Thank you, President Isley. We actually have two. We have a student representative on the Environment and Sustainability Commission who is graduating, Caitlin Roush. She's been a wonderful addition the past 2.5 years, because she was attending before she was a commissioner herself. And we have a new young man, Sean Pierce, who is studying environmental studies, perhaps geography, I'm not sure about that. But he's had a number of classes with me at the university, and he has also been attending our meetings. So the first appointment is Sean Pierce to replace Caitlin Roush. And then the second appointment is a non-resident member of the commission, Jasmine Fakoun, has decided not to renew her appointment. And we would like to nominate, the commission would like to nominate Molly Jo Stanley of the OEC, the Ohio Environmental Council, who has also been attending commission meetings for about a year as a citizen, and we'd like to add her to the commission. Those are the recommendations. Thank you, President Isley.
Great. So we have a motion for two new appointments to the Environmental and Sustainability Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We now have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak tonight? Okay. If not, our next item of business will be a motion to go into executive session for sale of a property by competitive bid. And if we could have a motion.
Sure, yeah. I would like to move that we enter into executive session with all members of council present, as well as president of council, law director, mayor, and service safety director, for the purpose of discussing sale of property by competitive bid.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and second, and the roll call vote. Councilmember Spielness.
Aye.
Reisner.
Aye.
Crowell.
Aye.
Swank.
Aye.
Grace.
Aye.
Zip.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay. And what we will do is we will go into executive session. We will, after we've completed that, we will open the doors back up. So if some of you have questions or things or want to talk to council members afterwards, we will then, after we open the doors, make a motion to adjourn. Thank you.